According to international law, the Yazidi community, like others, have the right to establish their own private educational institutions and manage them in accordance with local legislation. These institutions may include schools teaching Yazidi language. Unfortunately, the lack of financial opportunities for the Yazidi community does not give this opportunity. The state does not allocate any funds for this. Taking into account the right of the Yazidi community to create and manage their own educational institutions, the state should promote the possession of this right. Today, the Yazidi community has a great need for professional education, adult education, and training of professional groups, including lawyers, police, journalists, government officials, and even political and public figures. It can also include such types of educational activities outside the traditional school, such as religious education classes or summer educational camps. Over the past decade, speaking about the Yazidi community and the civil society of the countries of residence, they began to talk very narrowly, only about secondary and complete education in their native language, which currently covers no more than 10% of the Yazidi community. This attitude creates a lack of competitiveness for the Yazidi community. Such thinking makes the Yazidis very weak as a community. This affects the real lack of representation in many spheres of socio-political, cultural and social life. Today we can state the fact that in all countries where the Yazidi community resides, Article 5 of the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination is violated, which clearly states the obligation of the state to guarantee the right to education at all stages of personal development. As you know, the first years of education are crucial for the development of a child. According to research in the field of education, a child's native language is an ideal means of learning in preschool and kindergarten. The children of the Yazidi community are not provided with conditions that allow parents to have such a choice. The choice of preschool education in the native Yazidi language has become simply impossible. This provision actually casts doubt on the ability of the Yazidi community to speak their native language in the near future. Yazidi language should be taught to the Yazidi minority as an academic subject on a permanent basis, which, unfortunately, is not being done. The state language should also be taught as an academic subject on a permanent basis, preferably by bilingual teachers who have a good understanding of the cultural and linguistic characteristics of the Yazidi community. Unfortunately, such conditions have not yet been created, which will lead in the near future to the actual assimilation of the Yazidi people and complete dissolution into the titular nation. Despite numerous European reports and recommendations of leading international organizations, there is still no curriculum in secondary schools for Yazidis. Providing primary and secondary education for the Yazidi community in Yazidi language or teaching it. All this depends on the availability of teachers who have been trained in all subjects in their native language. However, so far we do not see that such an opportunity has been realized or sufficient favorable conditions have been provided for appropriate teacher training and facilitate access to such training. The reality is that, bearing in mind the importance of preschool education in the native language, from this point of view, the educational system in the countries of residence has ceased to take into account the language and culture of the Yazidis. In fact, the Yazidi community does not have preschool institutions, orphanages in their native language.